Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gentreo podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jacob Murphy. Joining me today are sisters, co-founders, COO, and CEO Julie and Renee Fry. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us, Jake.
So obviously, you guys are the founders of Gentreo, so you're already pretty well integrated into the estate planning world. But I wanted to talk today a little bit about how you found yourselves being these pioneers in this industry.
We loved it. So Julie and I went to our moms and dads to visit, and they said, "Hey, we're going to get our estate planning updated because it's been since when you guys were little and you're now all adults, and we need to be prepared for anything that might be coming down as we age." And so we decided that that was a really good idea. And they found an estate planning firm, scheduled the appointment, and they did a lot of prep beforehand. And we got to the meeting, and it was really just pretty standard. And then there's the $10,000 bill that came. And so Julie and I literally walked out of the offices of the attorneys, and I think it was Julie who said, "Wow, someone who should start a business doing this, because that is crazy that it costs $10,000 to do something that seemed pretty rote to us and didn't seem all that personalized, even though we had worked really hard to make sure we had all the information, all the documents, and everything there." And then we immediately looked at each other at the same time and said, "We should do that."
And our family is a little bit unique in that Renee is a year older than me, and our brother is a year younger than me. So it's three kids, one, two, three, right in a row. And Renee and I both live in the Boston area, and our brother lives in Illinois. And so we happen to be very fortunate in that we're a very close family. And so we, unlike a lot of people, really didn't have any family fights about who gets what, who needs to care for whom, etc. We actually literally would have discussions about who would care for mom and dad if something happened. We want mom to live with us. We want mom to live with, our brother, etc. And so we were really fortunate in that we were all a united team. But even as a united team, estate planning was really hard. It was really cumbersome. It was really expensive. And because we were spread out across the country, it was really hard because we weren't coordinated. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to deal with. We wanted to make it easy for families, and we wanted to provide tools so that not only can people create these documents, but also they actually have tools so that everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what the decisions are, and they have the legal documents to make sure those decisions are actually.
And real quick, I want to add the affordability part being something that was critical to us because our parents paid $10,000. And so when Julie and I were talking about what should the pricing be, we wanted to make something that really is for the user and their family and their friends that can stay with them across their lives. So as things change, as you find that now your children are adults and they need their own documents, or you need to update their will or your will, that really as life changes, Gentreo can stay with you. And so this is where, while others charge $700 to do something like a living trust, Gentreo has one standard low price. It's $150 if people come directly to the site. You should always look for coupons. Julie and I like coupons, we can tell you that. But it's one of those things where we've made it affordable because everyone needs estate planning. And it's something that really in the past has been too expensive for people, or they would always put off and say, "Oh, I just had a baby. I know I should do this. I don't have $3,500." So now at Gentrio, you don't have to put things off. It's affordable. And like Julie said, it's easy to use.
Yeah, I understand that the way that you two have structured your company, there's a lot of parallels between the accessibility and the security and all of the functionality of Gentreo with how your experience was with caring for your parents. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what it was like and how that helped you figure out what Gentreo needed to be for families in similar situations?
We may be one of the only families that actually benefited from COVID because when COVID shut down the entire world, it actually forced us to find a solution to how we could help our mom care for our dad, as well as our mom, who was a phenomenal teacher. She's now retired. She helped us care for our nephew, all while we were building
Okay, that would be
Gentreo,
my child.
or my nephew.
Yeah, and then also our dad had Alzheimer's. So the one thing that we didn't mention yet is that soon after our dad and mom had done estate planning and 2 years or so, our dad developed Alzheimer's and it moved pretty quickly. And it was a really hard time. But the good news is that while he was cognizant, he was able to do his estate planning documents because had we not done those and then he got Alzheimer's, he would not have been able to create those documents because he wouldn't have had the legal wherewithal to be able to do that. So that's a really critical point is that timing matters and getting things done while you're healthy and able to is really important.
And like Renee mentioned, it is incredibly important that if you're caring for elderly parents or you're caring for someone, that they complete those documents when they are mentally capable of making legal decisions. If there's ever a question, feel free to talk to your parents' family doctor, and they can actually issue a statement and say that the patient or your mom or dad is not suffering from cognitive issues, and it gives you the ability, if the estate plan is ever questioned, to make sure that you can prove that your mom, your dad, your grandparents were capable of making those legal decisions. Because once they have Alzheimer's or dementia or can't speak for themselves or can't make sure that their opinions are expressed, it's too late. It's you want to make sure that you're creating your estate plan now, or you're going to be forced to go into what is something called guardianship, which becomes very, very expensive, requires the courts to get involved, and lawyers and lawyer fees. And so, if one thing that we recommend based on our personal caregiving situation is get this done now before you're, even if you don't expect that you need it, prepare now because you don't know what's coming down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to make. I know certainly the older I get, the more I feel like I know people whose families have been affected by things just like Alzheimer's. So for our listeners, um, what documents, in your father's particular situation, what documents with his Alzheimer's diagnosis were the most important to have, first of all, finished, but also readily available?
All of them. No, no, this is why we're so exciting
Mm.
to talk with. But number one, healthcare proxy. A healthcare proxy lets someone make medical decisions for you if you can't make a medical decision.
And
And
it also lets them make those medical decisions while they're still healthy and while they're capable of making those decisions. So before dad ever had Alzheimer's, before I ever had cancer, we made those decisions so that in the event that that healthcare proxy needs to be used, those people that we've appointed as our attorney know what our decisions are, and they have that legal document to make sure those decisions are made for you.
and Julie said the word attorney, so it's just a vocabulary word. It's not that we had to choose attorneys to be our healthcare attorney. It's just a term that they use to name the person who can make choices for you.
And going back to the healthcare proxy, this is something that is incredibly important because as dad progressed, as his Alzheimer's progressed, it became harder and harder to communicate with him. And the final months, he was not able to verbalize, and he couldn't speak, he couldn't bathe himself, etc. And during that last week, which was absolutely horrible on everyone, he ended up getting pneumonia. He went to the hospital, and the doctor came out and she asked my mother, do you want to put him on life sustaining treatment or do you want to give him pain medicines? And it was so hard because you could just see my mother's face drop and you could see the weight of that decision fall upon her. But it was great because Renee and I were sitting in the hospital room with her, and I stepped up and I said, that isn't, dad's already made that choice. And this is something that he has already talked about. And we know he doesn't want those really extensive life sustaining treatments given the pain medicine. And to be able to change that narrative was hugely important to mom.
And this was listed in his healthcare proxy,
Right,
sometimes called a healthcare advance directive.
right. And advanced directives, healthcare proxy, power of attorney for healthcare. It's one of a series of questions that we ask to make sure that people have the ability to say what they want to have happen. Do you want artificial nutrition? Do you want artificial hydration? Do you want, and this is something that because we were able to ask that for to dad when he could make those decisions, when we were sitting in that hospital room that last week, all of a sudden it wasn't mom making that decision, it was dad making that decision, because mom would have lived with that the rest of her life. Mom would have carried that guilt and really been so upset to have made that call, when now we were able to quickly say this is what dad wants.
I think it's really important. Like a big takeaway from this story is that when you're at any point in life, it's hard to make a decision like that, like the one that your mother would have had to make. Particularly though, if you're in that that crisis moment, it seems almost like the worst situation to have to make a split decision. And so, I just think that that's a really important takeaway
Yeah,
for why that document is just so important.
100%. So our dad, before he passed away, had 7 strokes, and each and every time, our mother was always in rightfully so in tears, crying, trying to make phone calls, trying to get ambulances, trying to save our dad, and it was so hard. And then she would have like a post-it note of his medication, all this, and so some of the things in Gentreo where you can keep your doctor's information, your medical list, your healthcare proxy, just a few clicks away, are driven from the fact that when you're dealing with these situations that literally are life and death, it's hard enough. And so you need to make it as easy as possible for the people that you care about. And especially for us, because we couldn't be next door. We lived in Boston, they were in State College, Pennsylvania. We really couldn't be there. And so we needed to give our mom the tools that we could so that she could get as much help as possible when she needed it.
I think it's unfortunate that these decisions can be, like you said, life and death. I think it's also unfortunate about how frequent these decisions can have to be made. So I wanna make sure I ask, how can someone create these documents for, be it a parent or whomever they're caring for?
So with Gentreo, we want to make sure that if you are caring for those elderly parents, you have the ability to create a complete and comprehensive estate plan on their behalf. And so with Gentreo, what you can do as the daughter who's preparing a document for your mom, you go onto Gentreo and you create the documents and you talk with your parent to understand what their decisions are. And you record that and answer the questions on Gentreo on their behalf as if you are them. So that you can type out, my mom is great at a lot of things. She does not do computer, she is not a huge tech person. And so being able for us to go in and type out everything, it was a huge help. And so what we did is we went in, interviewed her, created the document, which then we answered the survey questions. It produced a PDF, and that PDF gave us step by step instructions how to make it legal for mom. And then we're able to present the hard copy to mom so that she could go through, take a look, make any changes that she needed. And then if she was okay with everything, either make changes if needed. If she is okay with everything, make sure that she knew specifically how to get it executed or made it legal in their state. So, for example, did she need to get it witnessed in front of a couple witnesses? Or did we need to take her to the credit union and get it signed in front of a notary and a witness, etc.? We wanted to make sure that the caregivers had the tools so they could get the information, create these legal documents on behalf of their parents or their loved ones, And then they knew exactly how to make it legal and then had that digital vault so that the user and the caregiver can make sure that everybody knows where to turn in an emergency, everybody knows what those decisions are, have those legal documents, and not only the documents, but they can upload all that other really important information, like what medical information, as Renee had mentioned, or information about real estate or digital assets, etc., so that there's one place that everybody can turn to in an emergency. Again, for us, we were like many families that are spread all over the US. We want to make sure that everybody is coordinated, that it's easy, it's fast, affordable, and then it's accessible. So if you're going to Gentreo at your laptop or at your PC, or if you're doing it on your phone or your iPad, everybody can get access to the information when they need it easily, quickly, and quickly.
Now I know when talking about things like making these big life decisions, it can feel a little overwhelming. And I know in places like your blog, Laughing in the Rain, which all of our listeners should check out on gentreo.com, you talk about taking things a step at a time, a day at a time, both in your life and in creating your estate plan, meaning that it doesn't all have to get done one day. And we talked about briefly this point I'm about to make, but I wanted to come back to it because in this situation where it is caring for an aging parent, it is true you can take it a day at a time, but there is a window, correct? There is a point where it can't be done anymore, and I wanted to make sure we emphasize that point.
There is. That is really important because as people age and start to deal with things like dementia or losing the capacity to make a legal decision, you need to make sure your documents are created before any of that happens. So, in our father's situation, we created his complete estate plan prior to him dealing with Alzheimer's whatsoever. A lot of people, as they age, are fortunate in that while parts of their body fails, their mind is still there and they don't have cognitive issues. You can still create the documents then. You want to make sure that when you create the documents that it is upholdable in court and that number one, they can legally make decisions on their own. And then number two, they aren't forced to make the decision. So when you go in and the caregiver goes in and create something like a healthcare proxy or a power of attorney for finances, you're creating it on behalf of them with their consent that they freely sign off to. You aren't making those decisions for them. It's really important. And I want to reiterate, you are making a legal document based on the decisions that your parent or your loved one has already made.
Talking about this window where you want to make sure you get these things done before it's too late. Does this apply to all documents or just the healthcare proxy that we've emphasized a little here?
Nope, all
All the
because you need
documents.
to have the legal ability to make those decisions. So it's all
And I think also important to talk about is not just having those decisions made, but as you said, with your mom in the hospital, having them accessible at the right time. So how is Gentrio taken steps to make sure that not only are your aging parents or your loved ones protected, but also in that time of crisis you can take the action you've been planning for?
So we have a digital vault that you can save your completed documents into. You always get a copy of your most recent document that's there, that's easy to get a hold of. And then once you've gotten your documents probably notarized, if it's a will, something like that, you can take pictures, you can upload that document, and then you can share those documents with anyone you choose. So maybe your family members, maybe if it's a healthcare proxy, medication, medical professionals, but it's having all those documents in one place, and then also important information like medical lists, like who are the doctors, what type of doctors are they, so that everything's always just a few clicks away. Because what we've found is that too many people think they know something, but then when something's happening, they can't find the information, they can't find the documents. And so Gentrio becomes that one home where everything is all together all the time. And it's for anyone that you choose to share the information with. So whether it's Julie, who's 3 states away, or your next door neighbor, or even if you're dealing with like a pet sitter and you want to create pet documents, you get to pick and choose who sees what, how long they get to see it, and then when they don't get to see your information any longer, so that when the information is needed, it's right there.
Another really exciting feature that we put together for Gentreo is what we call the instant access button. So whether you're using your cell phone or a laptop or your iPad, there's a button in the top right hand corner you could hit, and then you can instantly see, okay, here's my mom's account, and this is all the information that mom has shared with us. So if you're in an ambulance and you need the medical information, or if you're in the hospital and you want to get a copy of that healthcare proxy, with a click, just a few clicks of the button, and you can access that instant share button that allows you to find what their decisions are and those documents to uphold those decisions.
And these are some of the really cool features that set Gentreo apart, because other folks will say, hey, here's this printout, or you can print this out. What Gentreo does is say, hey, this is just a few clicks away, because when the time comes to use something, to find it, you're probably not going to know which of 37 drawers you put it in your home, which filing cabinet, where to find it. But as long as you know that you have Gentreo in your pocket, everything is there for you.
I know we've talked about, caring for your aging parent, and that seems like an obvious one where you would want to look into these kind of documents. But are there other moments that people should be aware of in life that should trigger some sort of similar reaction to wanting to make sure that these documents are up to date and accessible?
Yes, we'd introduce Gentrio life inflection points for just that reason. Because there are some times in life that you need to create new documents, update documents. Most people don't wake up and say, it's Tuesday, I'm getting that will done. It just doesn't happen like that. But if you're getting married and you want to make sure that you and your spouse know who's getting what decisions are being made, or if you're getting divorced, those are some of the more interesting emails and phone calls that we get. We can't give legal advice, but we definitely read some interesting stories. But it's times like marriage, caring for an aging parent, like we just talked about, moving to a new state, having a baby. One cool new thing that we introduced was travel, because when you're traveling abroad, like we just went to France and stopped through London on the way home. And you
And
weren't.
it was when we went, right before we went, I had uploaded a lot of information, like my medical information and I have an international um, healthcare insurance. And so unfortunately, when we got in the middle of our vacation in France, I thought I had food poisoning. Turns out I got the flu. And for me, because of what my medical condition, it was really serious. So I called my doctors, and after 3 days of laying in a hotel room, just getting sick, they're like, "You're going to need to go to the hospital." And thank God I recovered and didn't need to go to the hospital. But had I needed to go to the hospital, two things could have happened. Number one, Renee could have accessed that information because I had shared that information with her. And then number two, all of that was already organized so that if I was able to access it myself, I could. If not, Renee knew where my insurance card was. She knew who my doctors were. And all of my information is there and accessible so that as we travel, we don't have to play that guessing game. And especially because we were international, we were across the pond, it was something that we didn't have the ability to look up everything, to call our, doctors. It was something that was already prepared and done for us. And so preparation is hugely important and a major thing that Gentrio really helps with.
I think I can really appreciate the fact that a lot of the functionality of Gentreo and the updates that you guys make to the platform not only come from a place of wanting people to have this accessibility and affordability, but it also comes from experiences that you've lived through yourself. So I wanted to, wrap up and ask, when it comes to caring for your parents or any aging loved one, what's something that you've learned both from your experiences that you think would be just important for our listeners to know?
You can't predict what's going to happen or when. And so when I was 37, I had a brain tumor, had a seizure, ended up in the hospital, and them asking where I'd like to go have surgery at. And I had no idea. I had no documents. I had never had any symptoms. I had one minor headache, and all of a sudden life just changed. And so what we recommend is that you don't know when things are going to happen, but they are, right? What do they say? Death and taxes. Stuff is going to happen. And the older you get, the more things, the more people they have stories to tell you, and someday those stories are going to be yours. So make sure that you're prepared because things happen and you can choose the inexpensive way of being ready and having things just a few clicks away, or you can choose not to be prepared and lose anywhere. When someone passes away, you lose anywhere from 3 to almost 11% of an estate's value in legal and court fees. So take advantage of the fact that folks like us lived through things that made us create Gentreo and provide the documents and the way to save and share and store all that information, because it's something that it's not easy living through all of this, and the stories that we get from people, a lot of times there aren't happy endings, but if you can be prepared and you can have it so that you didn't have to pay a ton of money to be prepared, you can save your family time, money, and heartache. And that's really the premise that Gentry has been built on.
Um, I completely agree with everything you said. The only other thing that I want to make sure to add on is the fact that we are creating that digital home that people can turn to, and it's something that grows with you. It's something that changes, that you can add to, that you can share with your neighbor who only cares for your pet and you only want to give them one bit of information, or your daughter who lives 6 states away and you want to give them everything. It's something that you build and that you control so that you are protecting them even when you can't do it yourself.
Well, Julie and Renee, thank you guys for being on and sharing your story. I'm sure you'll be on again soon, but we appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate hearing your story.
Thanks, Jake.